Good morning, everybody. I wanted to give you your weekly training update. Today, I want to focus on something I started to talk about but didn't completely unpack on the morning commute. And it's around creating conversations, but really tuning in from a listening ability. So turning up your listening ears to be able to uncover, discover, analyze, move forward with how to curate and create a solution. Most of you, if not all, have previously been in a conversation that the stories just didn't jive as you began to, when I say jive, they didn't sync up, they didn't lock, they didn't align. The multiple point of views around one incident and one story. Many of us, again, if not all of us, have also been in a part of that discussion, and our point of view is different even from the other person. So whether you are the unbiased person who's trying to investigate or whether you're actually a part of the incident and you're trying to seek clarity, the bottom line is you as a leader, you as the culture curator, you as the proxy protecting the master, the mothership inside of the culture piece, being able to problem solve and communicate and collaborate with authenticity and transparency is key. And you've got to be able to show up with that skill set as well. And it is a skill set. It's hard to listen always with intentions of understanding, especially when you're a part of the story, when you're a part of the live event. So there's a lot of things that you can read about when we as humans stop listening. So a couple of the examples around that, just to kind of keep it simple, is have you ever been in a conversation and you're in it, you're very intentional, you're listening to what's being said, maybe you're taking notes, you're regurgitating what it is that you heard, you're doing all those things, and then all of a sudden something is said or someone in the room or the group, something happens and you get distracted. Intentionally or not intentionally, you get distracted inside of your own mind and you start thinking about the surroundings around you and or what the person or persons just said, and you're going over that inside of your head, trying to understand what it is they said, try to unpack your own filter or to remove your own filter, and you get into the what am I going to say, what is my next question, what is my response going to be, instead of staying present with what it is that they are saying and trying to understand that point of view. So it doesn't mean that you have to agree or disagree with what's being heard, but it does mean that you need to consume it in order to do something with it. And I wanted to give you some tips and tricks and best practices around that specifically today. As you guys know, I do a lot of executive coaching with many of you, and also have either done or in the process of doing with you culture inquiries, some deep dives into your team or your entire company. And again, one of the things that I find is that the stories and the points of views are dramatically different. So this is a technique, if you can't hire an unbiased person for every little thing, that I want you to start to try for yourself. And when you're a part of that from if you're not a third party and you're trying to unpack it. So a couple of the techniques that you can use is, number one, if you're a part of the recount, the live event, is making sure that you always have notepad and pen in front of you. So when you're listening, especially if you're trying to work on your facial expressions, that you're able to listen and nod without inflection, and then to write down your ideas and thoughts. Even ask the person to say, give me 1 second, that was, let me write that down before I forget, and to set the stage up front that you're going to take notes during the conversation because you intentionally don't want to interrupt and that you actually want to listen. When the other person or persons take a pause and you're a part of the conversation, rather than gathering the information on the conversation, I want you to stop, look at what you wrote down, and then regurgitate anything that they need to know you heard them, especially if it's a confrontational, uncomfortable type of conversation. Real live action would be you asking me to stop and pause. Shelley, what I heard you say was, a good best practice is have a notepad and pen instead of being ready to talk every time you say something, to actually write it down and then regurgitate it to you to make sure we're on the same page. And then give my idea, thought, or opinion. Or please continue. So that's one. When you're live and you're literally a part of whatever is happening and whatever is unfolding, and it starts to go sideways, and you need to stay in the moment, professional, and the expert communicator, and protecting the culture boundaries of what right looks like around communication, problem solving, and differences of opinion. So that was example one. Example two, if and when you cannot get an outside person and you're a part of the team and you're trying to show that you can have an unbiased opinion, an unfiltered opinion, and to turn your own listening ears up in order to get to the root cause, a best practice is to have each person, it's similar to an investigation, each person to quickly write down, and or the easier thing to do is actually record their response to some specific questions. Tell me what happened. What did you hear? Why did you get upset? What is it that you wanted to? And not a lot, but just a few that they can answer in a few minutes. And then you have each of those translated, including yourself, before you go into the conversation. You do that separately, and then you aggregate it together. And you, as the person trying to pull it apart and to better understand, now have in front of you, metaphorically, black and white, what was said, and you're able to analyze it better without filter. You're never going to have the complete unbiased opinion unless you hire somebody from the outside who does not have an additional stake in the game. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But this tip will absolutely help you unpack it without putting in your biases or turning off when you should be listening. And then what you're able to do is to come back and show each team member that's a part of whatever the opportunity is, these are the different things that were said, and you can see how you're off track and where the misunderstandings, the misconceptions, where you stopped listening actually happened. It's a great way to unpack it. So number one is always use your notepad and pen to be able to stop, take notes, regurgitate instead of the interrupting. Number two is capture the statements. There's a lot of tools out there that you can do the audio for free. So don't think this is an expense, but you actually give 3 or 4 key questions to unpack what happened, literally on the recording. They read the question. Question 1 asks me blah, 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 blah. Here's my response. Question 2 asks me blah, 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 blah. Here's my response. And then you're getting right down to the task brackets of our perceptions individually. And then you aggregate them together. And then you're able to look at them without your biases. It's best if you have those submitted into the program that actually doesn't give the person's name, and you just have, speaker 1 said, speaker 2 said, and you actually see those dissemination. So it's a great way to get at it. So that's my tip on listening today. It helps you further unpack it. And remember, it is about what did you hear? And some of these are in different orders depending on the scenario. What is it you were trying to get to? End result. If the end result was, I wanted to work with so-and-so on this in this specific manner, state that up front, because we got to figure out where did you get off track. It's like metaphorically having a roadmap or a GPS, and there's detours. Eventually you got to get back on track. But if it took longer to get there, you want to know what derailed you. Well, it was the detour. What are the detours in your conversations or in your responses or in your scheduling that's stopping you from either working with somebody, hitting deadlines, whatever it is you're trying to execute, build rapport? What were the detours? In order to get to the detours, you've got to listen without filter and assumptions and biases. It all has a huge impact on your culture. Imagine a day where you can have differences of opinions, disagreements, agree to disagree, but you're actually listening to what you heard in order to move forward in the conversation, in the team, in the collaboration, in the resiliency of your team, in the accountability of your team, in your shared leadership. Imagine. It starts with conversations and listening. That's it for today's training. You guys, if you have any questions or comments, need additional resources, if you want to further unpack this on our one-on-ones, more than happy to do that. Have a great day.